AMD earnings blew out expectations. The results and forward guidance are bullish, not only for AMD itself, but Micron, Nvidia, and semiconductor stocks in general. As I've said before, I think AMD and especially Micron could double in the near future. Now, in this video, I'm going to summarize the earning results from AMD, what forward guidance AMD gave, why these are bullish signals for the entire semiconductor space, and some macro signals that are tailwinds for these stocks as well. Thanks for watching, guys. The purpose of the channel is to show you how the mind of a millionaire investor works. Now, if you guys want to chat with me about stocks and learn everything I know, join the private group, link in the description below. You'll see what stocks I'm buying, when I'm buying them, and why. Portfolio is up about 3.3% for the week, up to all-time highs actually, above 1.2 million for the first time. Let me know how you guys are doing in the market this week. AMD, crazy enough, is down about 8% in the after hours after reporting these massive earnings. Honestly, guys, as I've said so many times on the channel, chip stocks are going to have insane volatility, right? Now, this could be traders selling the stock as just over the last 5 days, it's gone up 15%. A lot of traders have been buying AMD on 2x leverage and they're up 30% for the week, and they're just taking these gains for the week. But long term, AMD is positioned for massive growth. Micron is about flat in the after hours, down about 0.78%. But basically, we're seeing massive bullish signals here. AMD released their investor relations information. They released their financial reports. And I did the digging for you guys here, right? So you see all the information here. We're gonna summarize this really, really quickly. Now, AMD Q2 earnings, essentially the signal here is that the AI supercycle it's accelerating, right? Now, there's been a lot of fears the last few months that the AI supercycle was going to hit a brick wall, that CapEx spending was going to completely slow down, and these chip stocks were going to see not only a slowdown in growth, but potentially even a drop in year-over-year revenue. Now, that is not the case for Q2, and the forward guidance for Q3 is bullish as well, showing that actually spending for AI chips is going to accelerate, right? We've been talking about that on the channel. The skepticism, the market is really in shock at how quickly these chip stocks have gone up, and they're really trying to digest what's happening here, right? And that's why we've seen chip stocks go down massively the last few weeks. But the proof is in the pudding, and the market can only take so much good news. So revenue, $11.5 billion in Q2 for AMD. This was up 50% year over year. And even more bullish is the guidance of $13 billion for Q3, right? So they're guiding revenue to go up even further in Q3, right? And again, not only is this bullish for AMD itself, but this is also bullish for companies like Micron, SK Hynix, Nvidia. These companies have all been, hit with the same sentiment shift, right? The sentiment that there's skepticism that this growth can continue. And when you see companies like AMD posting massive 50% year over year growth, then guiding for even more growth, in Q3, this is a bullish signal across the board. Now, data center growth, 6.7 billion in Q2, which is up 107% year over year. That is huge, massive growth. We are not hitting a brick wall. Now, sector outlook, major catalysts for AMD, Micron, Nvidia, and the semi ecosystem, right? Now, we're waiting, I believe, a few more weeks for Nvidia to report earnings. Then we have Micron, I think, reporting in about 5 or 6 weeks. We're gonna have to wait a little bit, right? But these are bullish signals across the board, especially when you see Nvidia has continued to grow massively. At the same time, AMD is growing 100% year over year when it comes to data center growth, and it's not really eating into Nvidia, right? So you have, the sector itself is growing so massively that all of these companies have enough of the pie to eat and continue to grow. Now, AMD delivered an earnings report that completely reset the expectation for the semiconductor space. Again, sentiment will slowly begin shifting back towards these companies continuing to grow. Top line revenue surged 50% year over year to 11.5 billion, and the data center demand grew over 107% year over year. Now we're going to talk through the numbers, the guidance on the call itself, and why this is a massive tailwind for AMD, Micron, Nvidia, and the entire AI hardware sector. Now as far as Q2 financial breakdown for AMD, now total revenue for Q2 was $11.5 billion. This beat the consensus, which was $11.31 billion. And this is what we talked about on the channel recently, is that AMD has beat the consensus estimates like quarter after quarter after quarter. They keep beating, they keep getting underestimated, and then the stock continues to go up, right? The market continues to be skeptical and they continue to outperform. Adjusted EPS, earnings per share, 1.66 earnings per share, or $1.66, beating the consensus of $1.62. Year-over-year growth is 246% growth as far as earnings per share, adjusted earnings per share. Gross margin was 56%. They beat the expected 55%. And the Q3 revenue guidance at $13 billion beat the expected Q3 revenue guidance of $12.5 billion with a 41% year-over-year growth. You see guys, they continue to beat. And the connection is obvious here, right? AMD has been facing the same headwinds as Micron, SK Hynix, Nvidia to a certain extent. And a lot of it is, like we said, the sentiment, right? So if you see the earnings continue to beat, we've seen, companies for the most part continue to beat, and AMD is just the latest, specifically in the chip sector, which is sending this bullish signal for the market. Now, as far as segment performance breakdown, right? Data centers revenue was up 107% year over year. This now represents 58% of total revenue for AMD. Client, which is computer chips, $3 billion, growth of 23% year over year. The embedded technology, which this is usually like vehicles, as vehicles become more sophisticated, these chips are being used in vehicles as well. 19% year over year growth at almost $1 billion. And gaming, it's about $800 million. It's actually down 31% year over year, but it represents a very small portion of the overall revenues at this point. Now, key insights from the call. Now, these are the bullish takeaways as far as forward guidance. Now, inference demand. Agentic AI is driving a sustained GPU compute load. Now, there's been a lot of skepticism because the enterprise customers, right? So the end customers that use these products, there's been a lot of skepticism showing that these companies are not seeing an immediate ROI on AI spend, and therefore this spend is going to hit a brick wall. Now, that goes against, the agentic AI narrative that says, agentic AI is going to drive, ROI for enterprise customers. And this is also going to be extremely compute intensive, which is going to increase sales for companies like AMD, Micron, and Nvidia. Now, what we've been seeing in the market is, for example, OpenAI recently announced that they're lowered the price of some of their models by 80%, right? So we're seeing, OpenAI signal that they're willing to run at a massive loss, to continue running at a massive loss, to try and claw market share away from Anthropic, right? So essentially the losses are being passed over to companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. That's why personally I'm not really excited about investing in those companies if and when they go public. But that is bullish for the infrastructure plays like chip stocks, because the enterprise customers are going to be more willing to spend on these AI models, these agentic AI models, that Anthropic and OpenAI are providing, because they keep lowering their prices, right? And again, they're eating the cost, OpenAI and Anthropic, but this will continue to fuel demand for chip stocks. And we expect agentic AI, sure, we're not sure how long this could take, but in general, the next 3, 4, 5 years, we expect agentic AI to take off, and this demand on GPU is extreme. The demand on memory is extreme. Now, as far as supply chain scale, the rack scale Instinct systems are shipping faster. So they've been able to ramp up production and ship these chips faster than initially believed. Now, why is this a bullish catalyst for Micron and for Nvidia and just chip stocks across the board? Well, these AI accelerator systems, they have an insatiable demand for specifically high bandwidth memory chips. So they demand a extreme amount of memory. If you watch this channel, you know this at this point. So as we're seeing, we're seeing the market shift from basic memory chips to high bandwidth memory chips. These, they consume a lot of chips, right? These chips are stacked in a massive way, and this is increasing demand exponentially. So you can think of like GPU, CPU, and AI accelerator demand as almost like a leading indicator showing you, okay, if these, GPUs, CPUs, and AI accelerator chips, if we're seeing massive growth year over year in AMD, we're seeing massive growth year over year in companies like Nvidia, obviously, when they need the memory chips that Micron develops, this is a bullish signal for Micron as well, right? Because you can't run those AI accelerator chips, those CPUs, those GPUs, without the HBM memory chips that Micron provides as well. Now we have a sustained high average selling price as well. Hyperscalers have showed that they're willing to pay more and more for these chips as prices go up, exemplifying the fact that companies like Micron, AMD, and SK Hynix and Nvidia continue to show extreme pricing power. AMD also has signaled that they have multi-year contracts as well. Locked-in revenue is visible for companies like Micron, AMD, and Nvidia across the board, right? We've talked about that at length. The cyclicality of the chip sector looks like it's not going to be an issue for at least the next 3, 4, 5 years. Now, as far as bullish catalysts for Nvidia, these are very similar, right, to everything we just said for Micron. They've confirmed hyperscalers are continuing to spend on CapEx. This proves that the AI total addressable market is growing fast enough for not just Nvidia to win, but AMD and multiple companies selling chips to win as well. We also have companies like Google developing their own chips, and even as they continue to develop their own chips, companies like Nvidia and AMD continue to eat, extremely well and grow earnings really well as well. So the total addressable market is proving to be massive enough to feed the growth of multiple companies, right, including Nvidia. And we hope we will be seeing Nvidia's earnings in the next few weeks as well. Now, as far as macro tailwinds in the sector, we have the enterprise transition, right? Like we've spoken about, AI is moving from just testing to production and deployment. More companies are, they're deploying these products at the enterprise level, both internally to increase productivity, and then both also outwardly, at the customer level when it comes to like call centers, coding, things of that nature. And these are bullish tailwinds for all of these companies across the board, right? As you see, these companies are deploying these systems in production, both internally and externally. Although there's been a lot of skepticism as far as immediate ROI, we are seeing continued adoption, continued growth, which is feeding continued demand for the AI infrastructure. So those are really the main points here, guys. I also want to point out that AMD is expected to continue to grow earnings and revenue. If you guys take a look at your screen here, this is the expected growth curve, right? We're essentially here. Sorry, we're here, give or take. And the growth curve is expected to continue even further, right? You see the curve bending upward. So all of the data, all of the signals are pointing to not just a continued growth when it comes to the chip sector, but an acceleration well into the end of 2028, right? So bullish signals across the board. Again, this is something that we've been talking about on the channel for so long, guys. This is a massive opportunity, especially for a stock like AMD and especially Micron, which is trading at an extremely cheap PE, a forward PE of, I believe, 6.6, which is insane, guys. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree that AMD is a massive buy at the moment? Do you agree that Micron and Nvidia are as well? I do want to point out the risks. Every now and then I like to obviously point out the risks for the stocks. We want to be balanced on the channel here. We don't want to have our head, in the sand. We want to understand the risks as well. Now, as far as specific company risks for AMD, now earnings, volatility, and valuation multiples Heavy institutional selling in the last 48 hours reflects extreme market anxiety ahead of the earnings report that we just posted today, as analysts warn that AMD's high forward PE ratio leaves the stock vulnerable to a significant sell-then-use event if AI revenue guidance does not exceed the highest end estimates. Now, of course, guidance was extremely bullish this quarter, but obviously that's always a risk in Q3 that could, go in the opposite direction. Now, geopolitical tariffs and licensing barriers. Recent reports of a 15% surcharge on AI-specific chip exports and the implementation of case-by-case licensing for the certain series, the MI325X series created by AMD. This creates immediate friction for international revenue, potentially curtailing high-margin shipments to the Chinese data center market. Obviously, geopolitical dynamics continue to be an issue when it comes to the chip sector. This same barrier is something that actually protects companies like Micron from China trying to sell memory chips as well. From the flip side, we don't expect the U.S. to allow these chips to be sold in China, but then we have export tariffs and surcharges for American companies as well. So this is a headwind for American companies. Now, this is the most interesting one here, supply chain and packaging constraints. Now, we talked about how this is a bullish signal. AMD's bullish earnings is bullish for Micron. Now, on the flip side, Micron is currently ramping up the production of their HBM memory chips. However, if they're not able to keep up with demand, then AMD is going to have a hard time, shipping their output as well, because they rely on these memory chips, right? So this is why you see companies like SK Hynix, Micron, they are building out more infrastructure, more manufacturing plants to meet this extreme demand. They've already said that even well into 2027 and 2028, they don't expect to even meet demand yet in the coming 2 years. And this could potentially be a headwind for companies like AMD as they rely on these high bandwidth memory chips to make their GPUs, CPUs, and AI chips functional, right? So I would say that's the biggest headwind personally, in my opinion. I do think that could cause a dip at some point in the next 2 to 3 quarters, simply because the demand is so much stronger than the supply of these memory chips can hold up. But again, I think that's actually bullish for Micron and SK Hynix, as they could continue to increase their prices as they've demonstrated to have massive pricing power for their chips. But that's it for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it's unusual that AMD is down after hours, at least as of making this video, when they blew out earnings? Personally, I think that's probably traders just taking profits. Were you impressed by AMD beating earnings across the board? Personally, I was expecting this, as they've beat across the board for the last, I think 3, 4, 5, 6 quarters. Let me know in the comments, guys. Let me know how you're doing in the market this week. Again, the portfolio is at all-time highs. Really love seeing that number above 1.2. I've been waiting for that for a few months. Pretty cool to see there. And again, if you guys want to see which stocks I'm buying, when I'm buying them, why I'm buying them, and the method I use to analyze stocks and build wealth, join the private stock group. The link to that is in the description of this video. Hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you on the next video.